Hi, I'm MedioCore, and in this video I'll be explaining the storyline of Dark Souls 2 with my limited intellectual capacity. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, then go do that right now and then come back. Otherwise, this video will make even less sense. Let's get into it. Remember in Dark Souls 1 when we linked the fire under the guise that it would extend the Age of Fire and stop the Undead Curse?
So that was a lie.
The Undead Curse never stopped, and after an undisclosed amount of time after Dark Souls 1, the fire is once again fading. You, the player character, is afflicted with the Undead Curse, and you're desperate for a cure because not one bitch has been swiping right ever since you started looking like this. Your quest for a potential cure takes you to the kingdom of Drangleic. In its prime, Drangleic was ruled by King Vendrick, who built his nation on 4 powerful souls. I can't see how it will work on a practical level, but with the help of the 4 souls, the empire grew and flourished. Then, out of nowhere, some bad bitch named Nashandra started coming onto Vendrick, and she was like,
"You should invade the lands of giants before they invade ours now."
which is flawless logic on her part. So naturally, Vendrick is like, Vendrick won the war and took Nashandra as his queen. Unfortunately, the giants were like,
No, you.
and invaded right back, starting a war on Drangleic's soul that lasted for decades. In the end, King Vendrick reigned victorious. But just like my serotonin reserves after I became 12, Drangleic was reduced to rubble. To make matters worse, the Undead Curse also popped up in Drangleic at this time. In response, King Vendrick and his brother Aldia spent years researching the curse to look for a cure, but they never did. Vendrick and Aldia also had a falling out, but it is never stated as to why, so I am just going to say that Aldia hit Vendrick with the blue shell in Mario Kart, which led Aldia to be exiled from Drangleic. Safe to say, Vendrick's life was falling apart at this point. To put extra salt in the wounds, Vendrick also finds out that Nashandra is actually a daughter of the Abyss. She only came to Drangleic to manipulate Vendrick because he could give her access to the Throne of Want, and also to the First Flame. Vendrick snapped, and he was like... He locked himself away in an endless tunnel that could only be opened with 4 very powerful souls. Vendrick hasn't been heard from since, and now Drangleic is hanging on by a thread. Some centuries after these events, you, the player, enter Drangleic in search for a cure. It is said that all undead will one day lose their souls, their memories and their humanity. Drangleic is just a place where undead with little time remaining seem to end up, although most of them don't seem to know why.
When I first came into this forsaken land, it was...
I just sort of ended up here.
And then I came here to...
I came here to drink milk and suck dick, and I finished my milk days ago. Our first stop is a hut, where some old chicks that used to be firekeepers live. Here, you can create your character and they tell you what is likely to await you. They also make fun of your curse and your lot in life. And I kinda dislike ableism, especially from old crippled c***s, so... After successfully resolving that conflict, you find your way to Majula. Here, you'll find a plethora of colorful characters, and also a lady known as the Emerald Herald. The Emerald Herald gives you the Estus Flask, and then sends you on a quest to find King Vendrick, which requires 4 souls from other powerful beings. Which is the same premise as the first game, also time is once again convoluted. Dark Souls 2 borrows many lore ideas and premises from the first game. The difference is that the first game had the decency to actually provide lore. After the advent of fire, Gwyn challenged the everlasting dragons for dominion of the world. His mighty bolts peeled apart their ancient skills, allowing them to be killed by other means of attack. It was at this point that Gwendolyn started sucking dick in exchange for limited edition pumpkin spice lattes from Starbucks, and thus the Age of Fire began. Meanwhile, Dark Souls 2 is like Kreml, the god of struggle. He rewards those who struggle. The Emerald Herald also tasks you with finding those with names unutterable, so we'll take a detour to
Clan Bard push Gwingis go get a Quindrobble, Clan Cecilio go.
Now, it's time to set off on a grand adventure, and the local residents give us clues where to find the 4 great souls in order to get to King Vendrick. There is also an NPC that has the most drip in town, and I kinda hate the fact that he is surpassing me, so... We then make our way to the Forest of Fallen Giants. Here, we meet a homeless heroin addict who sells us goods that may or may not have been acquired through grave robbing. We immediately become best friends. Hey Shody, what up? Further down, we meet the last giant that has remained in Drangleic after the war. This is a historic moment and a discovery worthy of a Nobel Prize. Naturally, we kick his shit in the first chance we get. He drops a key, and since he does not have any pockets, we are left to assume that he stored it internally. The key unlocks the upper part of the castle, where a formidable opponent resides. His only weakness? Military grade ballistas. This frees up the way to the Crow's Nest, where we can outdo the Lord of the Rings and take an eagle to skip most of our journey. After arriving in the Lost Bastille, it turns out that we reached a dead end and came all this way just to put down some puppies and have our intelligence insulted. After going back to the Shire, we can take a detour where we'll face the most difficult boss in the game. After that ordeal, we find ourselves in No Man's Wharf, which is inaccurately named because there are in fact men. Luckily, finishing men off is my specialty, and we're out of the wharf and into the boat in no time. The boat takes us to the Lost Bastille, where we can now open the dead end from earlier. Here, we can find the lost sinner. Her sin was not subscribing to my channel, for which she will burn into the depths of hell. After she deservingly loses her life, we are rewarded with the first Great Soul. Our next stop is the Shaded Woods. Going into the Shaded Woods, we meet Bootleg Gimli and a poor defenseless woman that has been turned into stone. She is blocking our way. Luckily for her, we can free her. Unluckily for her, her clothes are tattered. Luckily for her, we can lend her some. Unluckily for her, I only have gloves. Luckily for us, she's a bad bitch. After that ordeal, we can set off for the Shaded Woods. Here, we'll face off against Bootleg Quelaag. From there, it's smooth sailing to the city of Saldora, where the biggest enemy is city planning. After quickly cancelling Christianity and all of those who practice it in the area, we can earn our second Great Soul from the Duke's Dear Freya. If we go back to the crossroads at Majula and then take a left, we can find the Huntsman Copse. There, we'll find a hollow who is doing that one walk where we are in the late stage of a losing battle against public diarrhea, and we'll also face off against the Skeleton Boys. From there, it's a short walk to Earthen Peak, which is an old rundown windmill. I'll get back to why that pisses me off in a bit. But first, we have a date with Bootleg Medusa. Behind the boss room, you'll find an elevator that takes us upwards. The elevator leaves us at the foot of the Iron Keep. Judging by the elevator location, it should be situated on top of the windmill. In the Iron Keep, we find the most fun area in the game. Fuck! And we'll also be given a chance to wrest our third Great Soul from the hands of the old Iron King. After dropping myself into a well because my life hasn't turned out quite the way I'd like, and also playing Dark Souls, we find the Royal Red Vanguard. From there, we can drop further down into the gutter, which is like an even worse version of Blighttown. After many trials and tribulations, we can acquire the fourth and last Great Soul from the Rotten. Yay! After getting all 4 Great Souls, Alia, King Vendrick's brother, will jumpscare the player. He tells us that if we want to shed this curse, we have to find Vendrick. With the help of the 4 Great Souls, we can open the door that sealed shut the castle gate from the rest of Drangleic. Inside the castle, we find Chancellor Welliger, who gives us the backstory of Drangleic and tells us that the queen has taken Vendrick, after which he is like,
The queen brought peace to this land and to her king. A peace so deep, it was like the dark.
Ah, chills. Literal chills.
From there, we can find Queen Nashandra herself and she urges us to visit Vendrick.
Visit Vendrick.
We're just gonna go ahead and ignore all of the red flags so far because she's a bad bitch. After traversing Drangleic Castle, we find this fun area. Let's move on quickly. The final boss of this area is a skull with a frog hoodie, so at least they didn't completely drop the ball in this area. Our victory grants us access to the Undead Crypt, where we can hear a disembodied voice say,
Human, do not produce light.
I personally don't like it when people tell me what to do, especially when I still have my clothes on, so... The Undead Crypt is home to Veldstad, the last bastion of defense for King Vendrick's bachelor's pad. It is here that we finally find King Vendrick. His help matters fuck all cause he is already dead. The Undead Curse spares no one. Our arduous journey has been for naught. In response, we rob his fucking grave just like Shali taught us. With Vendrick's ring in hand, we can open the way to Alia's Keep, where we can find traces of horrible experiments. Despite that, he's a pretty cool dude because he has a backyard with a dragon in it. There's also an elevator that takes us to the Dragonary. Further still, we can find Alia again, where it is revealed the only reason he has been stalking us is because Drangleic doesn't have much use for philosophy majors and he didn't know what to do with all of his time. Later, an ancient dragon gives us the Ashen Mist Heart, which allows us to travel back in time. With it, we can relive the Giant's invasion in Drangleic. It is stated that the Giant Lord was felled by an unknown warrior. Surprise! That was us. He drops the Giant's kinship, which is required to beat the game. Luckily, this is never explicitly stated. Before we take up the Throne of Wand and extend the Age of Fire once again, we have to defeat the Throne Watcher and Defender. The last plot twist is Nashandra coming to steal our soul and becoming the final boss of the game. She also reveals her true form, which is horrifying, and I personally do not like it when I get catfished. So... If you want more video game stories explained badly, check out this playlist, you beautiful man or probably not woman.